If you go to a Google map of Rio de Janeiro and put it into 3D mode, you can see what the city looks like as it was designed by urban planners. But you'll notice parts of the city that don't look like the rest. See the difference? The people who live in these parts of the city with the clean lines and the well-thought-out design are called people of the asphalt. The people who live in these parts of the city are called people of the hill. Even though the people of the asphalt and the people of the hill live closely intertwined throughout the city, they live vastly different lives. These informal communities that look like houses stacked on top of each other, sprouting out of the jungle, are called favelas, home to both vicious drug gangs as well as some of the most peaceful, creative, and resourceful people in Rio. I want to show you what they look like on the inside. A favela is a community that was built without any oversight of a public authority. No zoning, no building codes, no public services. These places just kind of grew out of the hills over time thanks to two main factors. First was slavery. Brazil imported 11 times more slaves than the United States did, and Rio alone was home to more slaves than the entire American South. Slavery ended in 1888, and free slaves, still denied many rights in society, built these informal communities on their own. In more recent times, favelas have been fueled by massive migrations from rural Brazilians coming into the city looking for work. Not able to find affordable housing, these workers built their own communities. Today, 25% of Rio's residents live in these favelas. I spent time in 6 of Rio's favelas to try to figure out what happens when parts of a city develop without the presence of a government. This is Rocinha. It's Brazil's largest favela, and it has been dubbed a city within a city. It's a completely self-sufficient economy, the result of decades of makeshift solutions to basic needs like electricity and running water. Without a formal government presence, the residents of Rocinha created their own association, which helps coordinate public projects and resources. Since these associations grew up totally informally by people who had no training in public administration, the resulting community design brings with it a little more zest and creativity than your traditional city. But make no mistake, Rocinha is a full-on, functioning mini-city within the city of Rio de Janeiro. This impromptu resourcefulness is common within favelas. Here I am in Vidigal, a favela not far from Rocinha. This man Paulo is showing me his garden, but it wasn't always a garden. 15 years ago, this hill that we stand on was teeming with garbage. Paulo decided to clean it up, planting trees and cultivating a garden space that now produces fruit. He did this without asking permission because, after all, there was no one to ask permission from. If you look around the garden, you'll realize that everything is made from trash. On the other side of the city is a favela called Maré. People in this community have created art centers for young people to come and learn new skills. They also support established artists to create projects around the city that explore and communicate life in the favela. Here they are building a model of their favela out of recycled wood. In Providencia, a favela near the port zone, I met up with this guy, Mauricio, a photographer who lives in this amazing house. Mauricio photographs life in the favela and provides transparency to the good and the bad of these places. He thinks of photography as a weapon to fight against everything from drug cartels to the government when they show up trying to remove parts of his community. Whenever he sees corruption or foul play in his community, he photographs it and distributes it to a network of local and international media contacts. Over the years, people have learned not to mess with him.
É sempre brigando. Então, essa é uma arma que dói muito neles. A fotografia dói muito neles. Você resolve muito fácil com a fotografia.
So why are these people who live in poverty and neglect so driven to create beauty in order to survive?
É porque você sempre espera pelo poder público. E o poder público nunca está pronto para você. Porque se a gente não fizer aqui, não é eles que vão vir aqui fazer.
As coisas são mais permitidas. E outro é um lugar muito esquecido.
This reality of neglect from public investment has created a culture of creative survival. But there's a dark side to this too. So right now we're traveling over Complexo de Alemão, which is a huge complex or block of favelas. We're not going into the streets today because this place is still very much run by drug trafficking gangs. I would be sugarcoating the situation if I didn't talk about the fact that drug gangs still have major influence in a lot of the favelas, and Alemão is one of those places. Perhaps the most powerful gang in Rio is called the Red Command, a group that began as a left-wing political rebellion and whose headquarters are here in Alemão. Cocaine arrived in Rio in the 1980s, enriching the gangs and allowing them to grow in power and territory. The Red Command became more violent and lost its political ideology, focusing entirely on drug and arms trafficking.
The fact that favelas are informal and unregulated, it means both that they can become incredibly vibrant because people can take this attitude and build on qualities and be creative and change your environment. But it also means that you can get incredibly dysfunctional places when the energy and the kind of approach is the opposite. So you have these two extremes and they come out of the same force of kind of informality and lack of regulation and kind of flexibility.
In 2008, the city of Rio was ready to take over the lawless territories of Rio. They assembled a special force of police officers to enter the favelas and drive out the gang influence. They called this process pacification of the favelas. But this gets tricky really fast. There's been this big discussion in the United States about police brutality, but Brazil is on a whole different level when it comes to police violence and corruption. Human Rights Watch estimates that US police kill 1 person for every 37,000 arrests. In Rio, they say that number is 1 in every 23 arrests. So you can see why some felt skeptical of letting the police come into the favelas to try to restore order. This is Santa Marta. It's the first favela that received pacification forces back in 2008. It also happens to be the place where Michael Jackson decided to shoot a music video.
Era muito violenta, uma comunidade muito violenta, um poder armado muito forte aqui, né? Tinha dia de tiroteio começa de manhã e termina à noite, em pleno na praça. Depois da pacificação, foi a zero, chegou a zero.
Pacification worked for Santa Marta and a few other favelas for the first few years after 2008. But this favela is small, and the city dedicated its best police forces to the job. It's been a whole different experience in places like Alemão and other bigger favelas. Many of the favelas that I visited that had apparently been pacified were very clearly still under the influence of the Red Command. So while there have been some successes in pacification, the city still has a huge challenge ahead of it in taking control of these places. International attention paid to favelas is usually directed towards the conflict between the gangs and the police. There's movies and video games about this. This problem has been perhaps disproportionately amplified across the world. But while gang violence is certainly a problem, it represents one small slice of the favela experience. What seems to me as the more striking and interesting aspect of favelas are the thousands of men and women who are thriving in creative ways, in spite of being neglected by their government.